Former President George Herbert Walker Bush died Friday. He was 94. Pipe John Derica/AP photo driving the day we will never have another man in public life quite like George Herbert Walker Bush. A war hero. A two-term congressman. Ambassador to the UN and China. Chair of the RNC. CIA Director. Vice President. President. He was the son of a senator from the great state of Connecticut, where he spent much of his childhood. The father of a president and governor. For the history books. NYT's Adam Nagorny, George Bush, the 41st President of the United States and the father of the 43rd, who steered the nation through a tumultuous period in world affairs, but was denied a second term after support for his presidency collapsed under the weight of an economic downturn and his seeming inattention to domestic affairs, died on Friday night at his home in Houston. He was 94. Mr. Bush, a Republican, was a transitional figure in the White House, where he served from 1989 to 1993, capping a career of more than 40 years in public service. A decorated Navy pilot who was shot down in the Pacific in 1944, he was the last of the World War II generation to occupy the Oval Office. Mr. Bush was a skilled bureaucratic and diplomatic player who, as president, helped end 4 decades of Cold War and the threat of nuclear engagement with a nuanced handling of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the liberation of Eastern Europe. Yet for all his success in the international arena, his presidency faltered as voters seemed to perceive him as detached from their everyday lives. In an election that turned on the economy, they repudiated Mr. Bush in 1992 and chose a relatively little-known Democratic governor from Arkansas, Bill Clinton, a baby boomer, ushering in a generational shift in American leadership. NYT. Cover of the late edition of the New York Times. WAPO's Karen Tumulty, who has been working on this obit on and off for years. Although Mr. Bush served as president 3 decades ago, his values and ethics seem centuries removed from today's acrid political culture. His currency of personal connection was the handwritten letter, not the social media blast. He had a competitive nature and considerable ambition that were not easy to discern under the sheen of his New England politeness and his earnest generosity. He was capable of running hard-edged political campaigns, and took the nation to war. But his principal achievements were produced at negotiating tables. When the word moderation becomes a dirty word, we have some soul-searching to do, he wrote a friend in 1964. After losing his first bid for elective office. WAPO NBC's Garrett Hawks said on the Today Show from Houston, he got there late last night, that Bush will lie in state this week in the Capitol. He'll be buried in College Station, Texas, where his presidential library is located. There will also be a national cathedral service. CNN's Dana Bash is also in Houston. The last president to lie in state was Gerald Ford in 2007. The president will speak to George W. Bush this morning, per the White House, and will attend Bush's D.C. funeral service. Trump designated Wednesday a national day of mourning. The president this morning. At RealNowTrump at 7:16 am, President George Hector Watt Bush led a long, successful and beautiful life. Whenever I was with him I saw his absolute joy for life and true pride in his family. His accomplishments were great from beginning to end. He was a truly wonderful man and will be missed by all. Barack Obama's statement. Bush at the 1988 convention, I'm a man who sees life in terms of missions defined and missions completed. And when I was a torpedo bomber pilot they defined the mission for us. And before we took off we all understood that no matter what, you try to reach the target. There have been other missions for me, Congress, China, the CIA. But I am here tonight, and I am your candidate, because the most important work of my life is to complete the mission that we started in 1980. George W. Bush on Instagram. Jeb, Neil, Marvin, Doro, and I are saddened to announce that after 94 remarkable years, our dear dad has died. George Hector Watt Bush was a man of the highest character and the best dad a son or daughter could ask for. The entire Bush family is deeply grateful for 41's life and love, for the compassion of those who have cared and prayed for Dad, and for the condolences of our friends and fellow citizens. The Instagram post John Davidson, a longtime aide to Bill Clinton, reminds us of the note Hector Watt left for Clinton after a nasty 1992 presidential campaign. Dear Bill, when I walked into this office just now I felt the same sense of wonder and respect that I felt 4 years ago. I know you will feel that too. I wish you great happiness here. I never felt the loneliness some presidents have described. There will be very tough times, made even more difficult by criticism you may not think is fair. I'm not a very good one to give advice. But just don't let the critics discourage you or push you off course. You will be our president when you read this note. I wish you well. I wish your family well. Your success now is our country's success. I am rooting for you. Good luck, George. See the letter Peter Baker at Peter BakerNeat. We'll never forget traveling with Obama to Houston in 2014 and who was on the tarmac waiting to greet him? George Hector Watt Bush. I asked why he was there. When the president comes to your hometown, he said, you show up and welcome him. NYT has a great package up. George Bush's Life in 13 Objects. George Bush, A Life in Photographs, BuzzFeed, The Life of Our 41st President, George Herbert Walker Bush, in Photos, an amazing anecdote, from What It Takes, the legendary Richard Ben Cramer book about the 1988 campaign. When Lyndon Baines Johnson came to campaign for Bush's opponent in Houston, he instructed people to go downstairs to the street and wave to the president out of respect. A few seminal books about Bush, Destiny and Power, by John Meacham. What It Takes, by Richard Ben Cramer. If you are only casually familiar with 41, this would be a great time to read about his amazing life. Bush's Texas roots. Via the Houston Chronicle's Mike Tolson, the Bushes lived in Midland for almost a decade. It was where he made his first real money, his own money, and where he established his image as a true, if transplanted, Texan, one who could down to a bowl of chili at lunch and a chicken fried steak at dinner, snacking in between on pork rinds. Everyone in town knew George Bush Poppy. His childhood nickname had been jettisoned along with the Brooks Brothers suits, but isolated West Texas was not where he needed to be. A disagreement over the direction of the company led Bush to buy out the other investors in Zapata Offshore in 1959, and he soon moved the company to Houston. Houston Chronicler Remembrances. George Will in the Washington Post, The Extraordinary Life and Times of George Hector Watt Bush NYT Edboard. Perhaps, in a second term, Mr. Bush might have found a clearer sense of direction on domestic issues. We will never know. But if he is measured by his leadership and choices on the global stage, historians will almost certainly treat him more kindly than the voters did in 1992. NYT-Andy Ferguson, who was a speechwriter for Bush, in the Weekly Standard, there was his personal graciousness, and his upbringing in the long-vanished world of the Yankee ascendancy. His background in business and his conflicted feelings toward the grimier machinery of politics. They were, in this order, distaste, revulsion, and eventual surrender. His unresting ambition and his hard work. It's an unimportant, but interesting, nugget. In 1971, Bush complained about Good American Fare in D.C., prompting the owners of the Palm to open on 19th and M Streets, according to the restaurant. Good Saturday Morning. Greta Van Susteren interviewed President Trump in Buenos Aires. The Transcript and Nancy Part 2. The president will meet Tuesday morning with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer D-N.Y. and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi of California. First reported by John Bresnahan. Remember, about a year ago, they cut a government funding deal. Sneak peek, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, RW. VA. spoke to Anna for the latest Women Rule podcast that will be released Wednesday ahead of the December 11th summit in Washington. Subscribe and listen to the full podcast on a possible government shutdown. I certainly hope we don't do a government shutdown. I've told the president, in a small meeting, that a government shutdown, in my view, is a fool's errand. I've been through a couple, one longer than others, and it sends the wrong signal to our constituents and our country, that we're going to shut the government and we can't work out our differences. We're working hard every day to work our differences out with the Democrats and with the president. What she's telling Trump, I've told the president we're working as hard as we can to get to 5, which is what he wants. He originally asked for $1.60 billion, which is what we were able to get in a bipartisan way. So the story is yet untold, but I don't believe and I hope that we do not shut the government down for all the reasons I said, and that we can also work through these differences. That's the assurances that I've gotten. Carl Cheney, Cohen claims regular contact with Trump legal team when crafting false statement to Congress. President Donald Trump's former personal lawyer Michael Cohen said Friday he was in close and regular contact with Trump's White House staff and legal team when he prepared a statement for Congress that he now says falsely downplayed Trump's effort to land a Trump Tower Moscow deal during the 2016 presidential campaign. In a filing seeking a lenient sentence, Cohen's attorneys say his false statement to Congress, which Cohen pleaded guilty to on Thursday, was based on Trump and his team's efforts to portray contact with Russian representatives by Trump, his campaign or his company as having effectively terminated before the Iowa caucuses of February 1, 2016. Seeking to stay in line with this message, Michael told Congress that his communications and efforts to finalize a building project in Moscow on behalf of the Trump Organization, which he began pursuing in 2015, had come to an end in January 2016, when a general inquiry he made to the Kremlin went unanswered. Cohen's lawyers Guy Petrillo and Amy Lester write. Politica. Meanwhile, WSJ's Warren P. Strobel, CIA intercepts underpin assessment Saudi Crown Prince targeted Khashoggi. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent at least 11 messages to his closest advisor, Saad al-Qahtani, who oversaw the team that killed journalist Jamal Khashoggi, in the hours before and after the journalist's death in October, according to a highly classified CIA assessment. The Saudi leader also in August 2017 had told associates that if his efforts to persuade Mr. Khashoggi to return to Saudi Arabia weren't successful, we could possibly lure him outside Saudi Arabia and make arrangements. According to the assessment, a communication that it states seems to foreshadow the Saudi operation launched against Khashoggi. WSJBORDER Tales, exclusive. Homeland Security Chief issues unusual plea for help against caravans. By Gabby Orr and Eliana Johnson, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen has requested the deployment of civilian law enforcement officers from several other cabinet departments to the U.S.-Mexico border as early as next week, according to an internal memo obtained by Politico. In what current and former U.S. officials said would be an unprecedented move, the officers who in most cases have duties entirely unrelated to border security would help Border Patrol agents repel what the memo calls migrant caravans originating from Central America. The request suggests that personnel with such assignments as guarding diplomats, patrolling national parks, and protecting nuclear weapons might effectively become Customs and Border Protection personnel, as one former Justice Department official put it, with the power to arrest border crossers. Although the White House position on the request is unclear, such an action would be the latest extraordinary Trump administration effort to crack down on border security amid what President Donald Trump has increasingly cast as an immigration crisis. Politico's Manu Raju, Annie Grayer and Ashley Killow, Nancy Pelosi's freshman critics go quiet as major speaker vote looms. Elisa Slotkin was unambiguous as she campaigned for a House seat. Nancy Pelosi would not win her over. I have made very clear, publicly, that I would not support Nancy Pelosi as our next speaker, she said in late October. But now as an incoming freshman lawmaker after winning a hard-fought race in Michigan, Slotkin declined to answer 5 separate times whether she indeed opposed Pelosi during a secret ballot this week in the House Democratic caucus, and also planned to vote against her on the floor in January. "I'm not talking," she told CNN Wednesday when asked if she voted for Pelosi behind closed doors just hours before. CNN playbook reads: in Alaska. 7.0 earthquake, aftershock strikes South Central Alaska. Damage reported across region, by Anchorage Daily News says Hollander and Devin Kelly. A 7.0 earthquake jolted Anchorage and the rest of South Central Alaska on Friday morning, cracking and collapsing roads and highways, damaging buildings, knocking out power and sending people scrambling outside and under furniture. The shaking left many homes a mess, and aftershocks continued through the evening. A number of injuries, at least one serious, were reported in Anchorage and the Matanuska-Susitna borough. A homeowner fighting a fire caused by the earthquake at his home in Houston suffered serious airway burns, Houston fire officials said. Hospitals in Anchorage and Mat-Su reported injuries such as lacerations from broken glass. A patient came to Alaska Regional Hospital with a broken arm. ADNG20 reads. Reuters/Buenos Aires. European officials said that G20 nations had agreed to commit to reforming the World Trade Organization in a preliminary draft of the communiqué due to be released at the end of a 2-day meeting of the bloc on Saturday. The officials also said that language regarding migration and refugees in the draft communiqué would be kept to a minimum, while the wording on climate change would not show any backtracking. The communiqué still needs final endorsement from member nations. Reuters-David Hirschenhorn, Andrew Restuccia and Hans von der Burchard in Buenos Aires. Strongmen strut their stuff on G20 stage. Elena Schneider, inside the GOP's California nightmare. Burgess Everett, the most quotable man in the Senate, agonizes over leaving end of an ERA. No Bongine Christmas party. For the past 15 years, one of the most sought-after invites during the run-up to the holidays was the Christmas party thrown by Ron and Sarah Bongine. It was held at the couple's home in Arlington, and featured a celebrity guest. The duo is putting a pause on the fete this year. "We really wanted to take the year off and simply enjoy the Christmas season with our family and friends," the Bongines wrote in an email. Also, Mike Tyson couldn't make it, but remains on our priority list for future events. Clicker, the nation's cartoonists on the week in politics, edited by Matt Worker. 11 Keepers Great Weekend Reads, curated by Daniel Lippman. Why We Stop Trusting Elites, by William Davies in The Guardian. A crucial reason liberalism is in danger right now is that the basic honesty of mainstream politicians, journalists and senior officials is no longer taken for granted. Guardian h/teethbrowser.com The Truth About George Soros, by James Kirkuk in Tablet Magazine. Understanding the Jewish billionaire who is neither the villain of right-wing caricature, nor the angel of left-wing hagiography. Tablet I didn't know anything, with God as my witness. Der Spiegel, German national Mohammed Haidar Zamar has known them all. Osama bin Laden, the Hamburg terror cell that perpetrated the 9/11 attacks, and members of Islamic State. In an interview with Der Spiegel, he speaks for the first time with journalists inside a Kurdish prison. Der Spiegel h/teethbrowser.com Yeah, I'm not for everyone. By Allison P. Davis in The Cut, Lena Dunham comes to terms with herself. The Cut They say we're white supremacists, inside the strange world of conservative college women, by Nancy Jo Sales in Vanity Fair's holiday issue. Young Republican women are aggrieved, outnumbered, defiant. And they aren't going to apologize for loving the guy in the White House. I hereby confess judgment. By Zachary Armider and Zeke Foe in Bloomberg Businessweek, per Longreds.com's description. Small business owners across the U.S. are being driven into bankruptcy by usurious loans advanced by predatory lenders that are making a lot of other people very, very rich. It's perfectly horrifying, and perfectly legal. Bloomberg investigating hate, by Kathy Dobby in Harper's Magazine, Inside New York City's Task Force on Bias. Harper's, h/t longform.org -- The Constitution of Knowledge, by Jonathan Rauch in National Affairs. America has faced many challenges to its political culture, but this is the first time we have seen a national-level epistemic attack, a systematic attack, emanating from the very highest reaches of power, on our collective ability to distinguish truth from falsehood. National Affairs, h/teethbrowser.com -- A Business with No End, by Jenny Odell in the NYT, per longform.org's description, inside the maze of an Amazon scam storefront empire. NYT - We thought the Incas couldn't write. These knots change everything, by Daniel Cozzens in New Scientist, perthbrowser.com's description. The Incas left no written records when Spanish conquerors destroyed their civilization in the 16th century. They kept accounting records by tying knots in multicolored cords, known as quipus. Some scholars now believe that the quipus may encode a whole lost language, in which the Incas recorded their history and their legends. New Scientists - The Human Costs of Black Friday, explained by a former Amazon warehouse manager, by Chavi Lieber in Vox. Workers constantly feel like their jobs are on the line, because they are. Vox playbookers spotted Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross on a flight to LA from Dallas on Wednesday evening. He had a stack of papers he was flipping through on flight, slipped from his hands, spilled all over the aisle. I helped him pick them up, according to our tipster. Ross spoke at an Aerospace Industries Association event in California and also visited Vandenberg Air Force Base. Pick spotted at a cocktail reception last night at Adrian Arsh's house in Georgetown in honor of Gloria Estefan and the 2018 Kennedy Center honors, Kellyanne Conway, Carol Melton, David Rubenstein, Deborah Rutter, Capricia Marshall, John Rogers and Rachel Pearson. Pick of Kellyanne and Estefan # Thistown. Sally Quinn will interview Stormy Daniels live in D.C. because 2018, by Washingtonians. Ben Wofford. Birthweek was Thursday. Michelle Meadows, WH and Trump campaign alum. Chris Byrne, Trump campaign alum. Birthdays: Haley D'Antuono, Special Assistant to the President and Director of Operations to the First Lady. Jack Sewell of WH Intergovernmental Affairs. Natalie Wyeth Ernest, hubby tip, Josh. Karen Tumulty, WAPO political columnist. Shinanue, hat tips, Ben Chang. Jason Maloney, President of Jada Roke. Jen Psaki, Vice President at the Carnegie Endowment and a CNN contributor, is 4-0 H/T. Doug Farrar. Senator-elect Rick Scott, R. Florida, is 66. Politico's Elizabeth Ralph, James Senkbeil and Joshua Stork. Joel Miller. Charlie Anderson, Senior Advisor for Senator Michael Bennet D. Colo. Politico's Jacqueline Klimas is 3-0. Kyle Learman. Wayne Ting. Raul Alviller. Senator Gary Peters D. Mitch, is 6-0. Jared Scott Small. Tim Purton. Anita Mudgeon. Mary Louise Oates H/T. Tommy Haddad. Natalie Ravitz H/T. Cam Mumtaz. Alex Howard H/T. Alexa Papadopoulos. Safra Katz, CEO of Oracle, is 57. Tyler Haymore of Representative Ted Budd R-N.C. Office H/T. Melissa Brown. Josh Kraushaar, Politics Editor at National Journal, is 37. H/T. Hannah Trudeau. Representative-elect Lance Gooden, R. Texas, is 36. Sean Higgins. Marty Chase is 78. Jenny Lynn Bunton. Bruce Killock. NPR's Carrie Johnson. Journalist Yochi Dreesen. J.S. Kim. Burry Kurland. Jordan Lieberman is 43. Mona Zalama. Brett Lieberman. Tessa Gould. Jerry Henson dies. Reggie Smith. Katie Whetstone. Ed Fox. Bill Manger. Bruce Young. Becky Wiseman. Stephanie Youssef. David Selden, partner at Brunswick Group, H/TS Tim Griffin and George Little. Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor-elect Mandela Barnes is 32. Donnie Fowler. Terry New, H/TS Teresaville, Maine. The shows, by Atman Muskowiak, filing from the Big 12 Championship in Arlington, Texas. CBS Face the Nation. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Senator Mark Warner, D. Virginia. Senator Jeff Flake, RIs. Senator John Tester, Demont. Panel, Sung-Min Kim, Jerry Seib, David Nakamura and Jeff Goldberg. Fox News Sunday. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Senator Ben Cardin, DMD. Ret. General Joaquin and Michelle Flournoy. Panel, Karl Rove, Juan Williams and Jennifer Griffin. Live from the Reagan Library, NBC Meet the Press. Senator John Barrasso, RYO. Representative Gerald Nadler, D-N.Y. Panel, Dan Balls, former NC Governor Pat McCrory, Heather McGhee and Andrea Mitchell. ABC This Week. Representative Adam Smith, D. Wash. Roger Stone. Panel, Mary Bruce, Chris Christie, Matthew Dowd, Meghan McCain and Donna Brazile. CNN State of the Union. Senator Sherrod Brown, D. Ohio. Senator Mark Warner, D. Virginia. Panel, Representative Nanette Berrigan, D. California. Former Representative Mike Rogers, R. Mitch. David Urban and Karen Finney. CNN Inside Politics. Panel, Julie Pace, Tuluzolo Renepa, Sarah Murray and Rachel Bade. CNN Reliable Sources. Panel, Michael Isakov, Garrett Graff and Caitlin Collins. Susan Glasser and Matt Lewis. Margaret Sullivan and Oliver Darcy. The Miami Herald's Julie K. Brown, author of the Jeffrey Epstein series. Fox News Sunday Morning Futures. Representative Bob Goodlatte, R. Virginia. Ken Starr. Panel, Ed Rollins and James Freeman. Fox News and Diabuzz, David Bossie and Corey Lewandowski. Emily Jashinsky. Jillian Turner. Jessica Torloff. Sarah Fisher. CNN Fareed Zakaria. GPS. Panel, Ian Bremmer, Richard Haas and Anne-Marie Slaughter. Author and Morgan Stanley Managing Director Achur Sharma. The Rise-Fall of Nations, Forces of Change in the Post-Crisis World. Michael Lewis. Univision Al Punto. Live coverage of the inauguration of Mexican President Andrés N. López Obrador. Panel, Maria Antonita Collins, former AIM. John Feely and Antonio Villaraigosa. Report on the caravan crisis at the border, including an interview with Tijuana Mayor Manuel Gastelum and migrants living in a temporary shelter. C-SPAN. The Communicators. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra. Live from Sacramento. QA. Discussion on what it means to be an American with historians Douglas Brinkley, Edna Green Medford and Russell Shorto. Live from Mount Vernon. MSNBC. Kasi DC. Representative Mike Quigley, DL. Bill Browder. John Harwood. Natasha Bertrand. Alexi McCammond. Shauna Thomas. Michael Steele. Paul Butler. Joyce Vance. Anna Schechter. John Hudson. Washington Times. Mac on Politics. Weekly Politics podcast with Matt Muskowiak. Download on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, or listen at macinpolitics.com. Garrett Graff. Follow us on Twitter: Anna Palmer @Palmer, Jake Sherman @Jake Escherman, Daniel Lippman @Lippman. Subscribe to the Politico Playbook family. Playbook PM California Playbook Florida Playbook Illinois Playbook Massachusetts Playbook New Jersey Playbook New York Playbook Brussels Playbook London Playbook. View all our political and policy newsletters. Follow us